Welcome into the Burnout. He is the SEC Network and ESPN's Peter Burns. I am Ryan Burrell on the show, presented by MyBookie.ag. Code next round when you sign on at MyBookie.ag for that 50% deposit match up to $1,000. MyBookie.ag, code next round. Hello, Burnsy. Welcome to Championship Week. How are you?
I can't believe we're already here. And again,
so
the fact that we had 4th and 31 in the Iron Bowl, and it's still not like one of the craziest games that we've ever seen in that rivalry. Like we talked about it last week, like crazy stuff happens at Jordan-Hare. And I'm like, clearly that can't be the case. And basically the sports gods are like, clearly you're an idiot because we're going to provide that to you.
Clearly you do not pay attention to the sport.
Yeah. Right.
So let's talk about 4th and 31. First of all, it created some family drama for you. I mean, it was not a outcome that just went smoothly in the Burns household. You didn't just watch it and say, "Huh, how about that? Let's move on."
I mean, so I've got the kids, so we're hanging out, we're watching the football game, and obviously my daughter has always been a diehard Alabama fan, right? Mostly because I'm an LSU fan and she wants to just upset dad early, so I'm getting used to it. And my son, by proxy, of course, doesn't like his sister most of the time, so he's like, I don't like Alabama, so I'll pull for LSU. So we start watching the Iron Bowl, and I'm thinking, all right, like, let me explain what's going on. And I'm like, Alabama's a team in white, so Bo, my 6-year-old daughter, she understands that. Thomas, my 4-year-old son's like, all right, so the blue team is Auburn. I said, yeah, buddy. And he goes, well, I don't want Alabama to win. I want Auburn to win. Okay. I said, okay, so you pull for the blue team. So we're watching it back and forth, and they're trying to get into it. They don't really know what's going on, other than the fact that I just started losing my mind on 4th and 31. And I said, Alabama won, Alabama won. And my son just went ballistic. I'm talking about like crying as if we just told them like the dog had passed away or something along those lines. I mean, go on to my Instagram account at Peter Burns ESPN and listen, before you judge, it's wonderful content. I might be a bad father by telling my kids that I'm going to put them on national blast for crying, but he needs to learn the lesson. Like, you don't cry on that, on when I got a video camera around. Just don't do it. You're going to get on social media.
All right. So in the pantheon, though, of crazy singular Southeastern Conference plays, like I was trying to think about that this weekend. You know, you've got the Lindsey Scott play in the Georgia in the cocktail party, right? I mean, like years ago.
Mm-hmm.
That's a normal play, just at an abnormal time, right?
Right.
You know, you've got the prayer at Jordan-Hare, the tip ball in the Auburn Georgia game back in 2013, and the kick six in that same year. Yep, crazy, insane plays. I thought about, and I can't remember. It was 4th and a long. I can't remember 4th and what in that Arkansas Ole Miss play.
I think it was 4th and 25. Arkansas Ole Miss that decided the West, and it went back and forth. That was a crazy one. Bluegrass Miracle.
Oh yeah.
LSU, Kentucky, where Rich Morris already had the Gatorade poured on him, and sure enough, I think it was Devery Henderson that caught the pass from Marcus. Like, that was out of control. Like, it's about what events in sports, and specifically plays, do you remember where you were at when it happened?
Exactly.
Okay? Like that moment, even if you don't have a dog in the fight, like 2nd and 26, I remember where I was at. Obviously, it was at the game watching it. That happens.
You were with me.
Yeah, no, that's right. And I mean, literally,
that. I've got the photo to you. We had just me, you. I'll never forget. I was telling somebody this the other day. Me, you, Marty Smith, Taylor Zarzer, Dunaway. You had just said, "Hey guys, let's get a selfie. This has been an incredible game. Let's get this memory." And you hold it out and you do the selfie. And moments later, 2nd and 26.
And we've got the video of when, you know, it happened in the far end zone and everybody started running around the sidelines, and they literally collapsed right in front of us. And I still have that video, which is crazy. So you'll remember that. All of these great plays, you can remember where you were at. And 4th and 31. And, you know, it's going to be one of those plays in which the fact that you remember what the down and distance is for years tells you exactly what you need to know about it. Now, obviously, it carries more weight because if they end up winning a national championship, right?
No doubt.
Back in 2021, Alabama, that game in Jordan-Hare was what? 98-yard drive by Tua, 4 overtimes. Bryce Young, one of the greatest games in Alabama history, but we don't really remember it because Georgia won the title. Now,
that's right.
If Alabama wins the title, we'll remember 4th and 31 in the annuals of one of the greatest plays in the history, or you could argue one of the worst plays in college football history.
If it's your daughter or your son. Yeah, so it's always going to be remembered, to your point, it's always going to be remembered in the state of Alabama. In the state of Alabama, 4th and 31 will never lose its meaning. So, in the history of the Iron Bowl, you've got the kick by Van Tiffen. You've got wrong way Bo. You've got the reverse by Lawyer Tillman. You've got the kick six. I mean, you've always got these plays that have names. They'll always have memories in this state. That play, 4th and 31, if Alabama can find a way to beat Georgia, if they go to the playoffs, if they win a national championship, then it keeps kind of its national lore at that point.
Yeah, I mean, there's zero doubt about that. And by the way, I heard people calling it the mill throw. That's like pretty good, but it's got to be the nightmare at Jordan-Hare. If you're going to have the prayer at Jordan-Hare, it has to be the nightmare at Jordan-Hare, right? Like it's the heaven and hell, all of it. And there's nothing more interesting. Like my two favorite things on social media after big plays like that is, one, when people film the last play of the game. Like remember when Tennessee beat Alabama and you see these grown men crying and stuff like that. That's amazing. I love those plays. The flip side of it, the amount of Auburn fans that were like doing the selfie with themselves right before, like, hey, we're going to celebrate and we're going to rush the field and stuff like that. And silence. Silence. Can't stop watching them.
Yeah. All right. So two things on that. So number one, I am skeptical of almost every single fan watching it on TV reaction video. Like those are so easy to stage. All you got to do is rewind. It's so easy to stage. I'm pretty skeptical of those. Right.
Yeah.
So when I see those, I'm like, don't know if it's true or not. The two I like on any play such as this are the sports bar reaction, like somebody that's filming in the sports bar and you get the whole bar going nuts or throwing stuff, they're whatever. And then like you said, TikTok, I got stuck in a wormhole on TikTok last night during the Sunday night game. It's full of what you were talking about, the Auburn students that are doing the selfie, like, you're going to see a celebrate, you're going to see a celebrate, and in all of them you can hear like this distant cheer off in the corner. Yeah, off of the corner where the Alabama fans are seated. You can hear this distant cheer off of the corner, and they're all like, you got to be kidding me.
I mean, remember, I did it last year in Tiger Stadium when Jay Daniels had the 2-point conversion of you're just like, oh, my gosh, like I want to have this. Now, think about the amount of videos that you've seen of Auburn fans being just flabbergasted or Alabama. Think about all the videos that were that actually were created and will never see the light of day. Right? Like, because how many people have it? They're like, well, I'm not going to post this. It's like me at my lowest moment of all time.
I know.
And it's brutal. Now, I will say this last thing is you hired Hugh Freeze to do two things, right? One, you hired him to bring back a fan base that was fractured. That's been accomplished. The Iron Bowl in Jordan-Hare was electric. The crowd was awesome. No doubt about it. But he's brought that back. And two, you hired him to beat Nick Saban. And he's one play away, 4th and 31 from doing that in this first season. So, albeit it was a fairly disappointing season, top to bottom, there's no doubt that they're so much farther ahead of where they were under Brian Harsin in year one under Hugh Freeze. It's night and day to me.
Brad Nessler is a legend and does a tremendous job. He's with CBS. That was presumably the final Iron Bowl he will ever do, as the rights go to your network, to ESPN. Coming up soon, but he capped it off. I thought this was a perfect summation of the Iron Bowl, especially at Jordan-Hare Stadium. At the end, and this is, I've got to read it because I want to quote him directly. As the clock hits 0, here's what Brad Nessler said: the craziest, most unbelievable final 40 seconds of football maybe you'll ever see, unless you've been to the Iron Bowl. And I thought that was so perfectly done by Brad Nessler.
Yeah, I mean, again, it had everything. It had, I mean, go back even, you had the Coy Moore muff punt when he may not even been the right person to be back there when it happened. In fact, Hugh Freeze was kind of surprised that didn't even know who it was back there because they doubled the numbers up. You had the 3rd and 20 with Milroe scrambling and then getting crunched for the on the
great play,
the 4th and 1, and then they decide to toss it, and then they get it, and then the bad snap, and then Milroe taking the penalty of throwing it past the line of scrimmage, and then of course the Gravedigger, 4th and 31. And I still don't understand why they rushed 2 and kept the spy on Milroe. If for no other reason, I'm like, buddy, go send everybody, because I can't imagine Milroe going 31 yards to the house. I just,
nope, it's not going to happen.
Not going to happen. It's going to keep people up at night for a long, long time.
So you'll love this. So the way the post game worked, obviously, you know this, celebration on the field, everybody goes to the locker room. Emily Grace McWhorter, our reporter, had the Auburn locker room, regardless of what happened. I had the Alabama locker room, regardless of what happened. And Dunaway was, depending on where the biggest story was, he was going to come to that one, right?
Right.
So, obviously the biggest story becomes the Alabama locker room. So EG goes to the Auburn locker room. Me and Dunaway go do Nick Saban's post game, and then we're going to do the player interviews. So in the post game, Nick Saban is asked the name of the play and says, if it had a name, I wouldn't tell you.
Right.
So then here comes Isaiah Bond. And of course, he's asked name of the play. And the minute he said, oh, the play name is Gravedigger, I'm like, you have got to be kidding me.
Because I thought Milroe was asked about it as well, too. And he goes, oh, it's just a win play or something like that. Like he didn't want to say what that play was called. And Isaiah Bond's feeling it. He's like, it's Gravedigger, bro.
Yeah. When he said Gravedigger, I immediately knew, well, this play has a life of its own. I mean, you could have called it. I thought he was going to say, yeah, we call it Y left banana XZ, post 30 or, something stupid like that. When he said Gravedigger, you hear that moment. I'm like, that one's going to live for a while.
That may or may not even be true, but it would be something that lives in SEC folklore forever. The fact that they called it the Gravedigger.
I mean, that's an incredible name for a play. Incredible name for a play. And for it to do that, you're just like, yeah, I guess it was meant to be. We'll talk about the actual SEC championship game, which is coming up next with Peter Burns, the SEC Network, and ESPN. The show, Burnout, presented by MyBookie.ag. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie.ag. Code next round gets you 50% sign-on match up to $1,000 when you use code next round at MyBookie.ag. MyBookie.ag, code next round. Also, don't forget our friends at Manscaped. They got a bunch of great products. It is a great Christmas gift idea. All the products from Manscaped, whether it's that Handyman, which is the easy to travel with razor. They've got the beard hedger that I use all the time, keeps that beard trimmed down just right. They've got the weed whacker, takes care of the nose hair and the ear hair, and they got the lawnmower for the full body and the undercarriage. Great products like the boxer shorts. Burnsy's told you he loves those. The man grooming products, all those at manscaped.com. Manscaped.com. You're not going to show us your boxer shorts this week, are you?
No, because I'm not wearing any underwear. That's how crazy I was. So thank you.
That's a lot of information.
I can see how the Manscaped thing works if you want to.
No, that's it. We're good. We're good. I think they know it. Manscaped.com, code Burns. Manscaped.com, code Burns to get 20% off your initial order. Great time to do that with Christmas coming up. Manscaped.com, code Burns for 20% off. All right, let's talk about the SEC championship game. In a sense, Alabama's had to do this already. Some of those veterans will remember what you talked about. That drive out of nowhere from Bryce Young, an emotional 4-overtime Iron Bowl win. Everybody's celebrating that, and you got a great Georgia team on the horizon. Exact same scenario for this Alabama team.
Right. And again, everybody kind of going into that, we thought, hey, that's definitely going to be Georgia. Georgia's going to beat Alabama in that game. There's no problem. And then sure enough, I remember talking to Roman Harper all week long. He goes, buddy, I'm telling you, Alabama's going to win this game. I'm like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, Roman Harper. Like, what do you think? You played NFL football and college football? Like, I watch a lot of football. I'm talent. I'm on TV. I wear makeup. And I remember seeing him on the 50-yard line right before the game, and he pulls me over, and he goes, I'm telling you, Alabama's winning this football game. He's like, there's just some matchups I love. I just got out of the locker room. I'm telling you, they're going to win it. And I'm like, again, you don't know what you're talking about. And sure enough, after Alabama whooped him in that game, he just the first person, instead of like coaches like run after other coaches to say hi or after the game or, good game. The first person I see making a beeline to me is Roman Harper. Go, I told you, Burns, they were going to win this ball game. And now it's chaotic, right? Because you could argue that we're going to put an end of the college football world that we know it in a 4-team playoff this year. And this will be the last SEC championship game that I think will truly decide the fate of a college football playoff team. Because the way it's going to be set up with no East, no West, no matter who loses this game going forward, they're still going to be in a college football playoff. There's never a world that the second best team in the SEC, even after another loss, is not going to make a 12-team playoff.
Best case or worst case, whatever you want to look at right now, this game in the future would be for first-round seeding. I mean, that's what this game is about.
Right.
And probably the winner gets a first-round bye, and the loser gets a home playoff game. I mean, that's probably what we're going to have moving forward.
And not a bad consolation prize, especially if you're at one of these places where you're going to get the box in the concessions and the parking. But it's everything you want it to be, and at the end of the day, it's kind of everything you don't want it to be. Right? For us, the fans, it's awesome. You get to see two teams that are kind of on this collision course. Georgia's been great, of course, 29 straight regular season wins. They've had the SEC record. On the flip side of it, Alabama, the football cockroaches that stay alive somehow. And it's Kirby, it's Nick, everything you want. But if you're the league office, you find yourself in a really weird spot right now, because if Alabama wins this game, there's a chance that both Georgia and Alabama could be left out of the college football playoff, which is just mind-boggling to me. But because of the way the numbers are working right now, I don't see it being out of the realm of possibility.
So, and the second line right there says play-in game ? I feel like there is zero chance, and I know this sounds absurd. Yeah. I do not think an SEC champion gets left out of a 14 playoff. I just don't.
Nor would I. However, Michigan, who's a 85-point favorite against Iowa, they will be in.
Easy.
Washington, if they win, Washington, if they win, they'll be undefeated Pac-12, and the committee already loves them. They're putting Washington in.
Okay, so you got to. Yep.
So then FSU with the backup quarterback, albeit Louisville's not great, if they win it, that's an undefeated Power 5 school. Don't put it past the committee, okay? And then what if Texas ends up winning?
Your scenario right there is a problem. And so the cleanest path is either Texas or for Alabama. Now Georgia win and they're in. That's not even a discussion with Georgia.
Right.
But in terms of Alabama, cleanest path for them is either a Texas loss or a Louisville win. A Texas loss or a Florida State loss. Easiest path. Now you got 4 conference champions, easy in. They don't even have to think twice about it. It's only about seeding at that point. That's the easiest path.
I looked at it earlier right now. This is according to I'm pulling up our stats from our information group right now. Okay. Chances to reach the playoff if Alabama beats Georgia. Okay. Right now, if obviously if it says Florida State, Oregon, and Texas all win, they're at a 46% chance. They still have them under 50% if FSU wins over Louisville, Oregon beats Washington, and Texas ends up winning. And it's amazing to me that would be the case.
Yeah, I think, see, the weird thing is the Oregon they don't really have a foundation for their argument right now. It is complete eye test with them. That team, they've not beaten anybody of substance.
Oregon State's the only good team that they end up beating all season long.
Season long.
And then you'll have them saying they beat a Washington team that was pretty decent.
Yeah. So
those are the 2 wins that they would have.
Yeah. And so to me, even though the rankings don't show it right now, I would imagine this committee views Alabama and Oregon on roughly the same level. So now you've got a Washington win or a Georgia win. So I find that a really interesting argument. I know Oregon is ranked in front of them right now. Mm-hmm. And this committee has shown they really like Oregon. They're playing eye test with Oregon and really like what they see. But when it basically comes down to 1 beat Georgia, 1 beat Washington, I would be fascinated to see what kind of decision they make there if it comes down to those 2 teams.
We've already seen it right now where the committee values Alabama behind Oregon.
I know, but that's without a win over Georgia. That's it. But your lasting image would be them beating your best team. You've said
and the lasting image that you would have against Oregon is them beating the team that was ranked in the top 4.
I know.
So, I think I actually am more triggered of the fact of what happens if Georgia loses on Will Reichard hits a 55-yarder at the end of regulation and Bama wins 31-28. And you mean to tell me at that point where Georgia waxed Ole Miss, they waxed Missouri, they waxed Tennessee, they played pretty damn good football the rest of the way, and their only loss is going to come into overtime or a close loss to Alabama on a neutral site, who Alabama, by the way, at that point is either a top 4, top 5, top 6 team, and they're not going to go to the college football playoff? That, to me, if somehow, some way, Georgia loses a close game to Alabama and Georgia is out, but a undefeated FSU that barely gets by Louisville with a backup quarterback is in, I don't really want to drop the F-bomb, so I won't. But what the flip are we doing? I mean, honestly, it would not even be considered a legitimate national championship if that was the case.
Yep. One of our audience members today on the show said, "Is it this typical college football? The final year of the 14 playoff, we cannot get one chaotic Saturday, not one." Right. He said you watch. Next year, we'll have like 20 top 5 teams lose on a Saturday. It'll happen next year. When there's a 12-team playoff, we don't even need the chaos. You'll have more than you count next year.
Yeah, it is interesting because we've gone back and forth on that conversation this year, and I actually disagree with Doring. Doring called this one of his most enjoyable college football seasons he's ever had. And I know we've talked about it a little bit here on the Burnout. I think I love every single college football season, obviously, but was it that great? Like, I feel like what's great is all these unbelievable storylines. So we had one early with Colorado and Dion, but that was nothing. Ole Miss did what they were supposed to do, which is pretty much beat everybody, but they couldn't beat the big dogs. Okay, very Penn State-like. All right. Jaden Daniels, an unbelievable season, but LSU wasn't a factor because their defense wasn't good. 2 coaches ended up getting fired. We didn't really see any monster upset. I mean, in your mind, what was the biggest upset in the SEC this year? Maybe Tennessee, Florida, looking back at it, the way that game happened, but there wasn't there wasn't an A&M beating an Alabama, or there wasn't Missouri upsetting Georgia or something along those lines. Like, it was pretty much chalk most of the season.
You know how I think most people would answer that question is New Mexico State beating Auburn.
Sure. I mean, that was the biggest shocker of the season.
And if that's your biggest upset, you haven't really had a very turbulent season. That means most of the favorites won the games they were supposed to win, right?
I mean, even you look at Oregon's loss, it came to a good Washington squad. You look at Texas, they came to an Oklahoma squad
rivalry game.
They probably sure as hell didn't want to play the way that Oklahoma was starting to play a little bit down the stretch. So I'm hoping that just kind of like rivalry weekend is that the college football gods have saved up all of their chaos, and they're like, we're just going to sprinkle it on next Saturday.
It's going to get on
and just be like, all right, Four Loko, catnip, bath salts, all of it all together. Like, here's a bunch of crazy shit that's going to happen next week.
It is the Burnout. He is ESPN and the SEC Network's Peter Burns. He is with us every single week on the show, presented by MyBookie.ag. Code next round when you sign on at MyBookie.ag. Get a 50% sign-on match up to $1,000 at MyBookie.ag when you use code next round. Also, our apparel provided by Rhoback.com. They have got the softest hoodies, the great quarter zips, golf shirts, crew necks are brand new right there at Rhoback.com. So are pants, and they are phenomenal. Let me just tell you that. I've worn them. Rhoback.com, code TNR20 gets you 20% off your initial order. Code TNR20 at Rhoback.com. Another great Christmas idea. Rhoback.com, code TNR20. Great gift-giving season idea there at Rhoback.com. All right, SEC Coach of the Year. If you and you may vote, I don't know, you may vote in some, but if you were to vote for SEC Coach of the Year, maybe give me what a top 3, let's pretend it's a Heisman ballot. You got to go top 3, 1, 2, and 3. You would go what order for SEC Coach of the Year?
Yeah, I'd go Nick Saban coming in at number 3. I mean, listen, you still lost to Texas. You lost, or it felt like a loss to South Florida, and almost in a kind of a way you lucked into deciding that, hey, Jalen Milroe is going to be our guy. And you've done a great job, because I don't think it was a fantastic team as we kind of thought it was going to be coming into the season, but they still found their way to Atlanta, 11-1, a chance at the college football playoff. That's number 3. Number 2 to me is still Kirby Smart in the job that he's done. Has much talent, went to the NFL. They brought Bobo and Carson Beck along, didn't really miss a beat despite Ladd going down and Brock going down. And I mean, they're setting records. And again, the only reason why I don't have Kirby winning it is that, I've almost come to expect that gold standard where my SEC Coach of the Year goes to traditionally guys who I didn't expect to have that year. And that's Drink. At Missouri, 10-win season for them. I didn't expect them to be nearly that good. Cody Schrader was awesome. Him deciding to keep with Brady Cook, Luther Burton, developing him. And I think the reason why is 2 reasons I'd have Drink as the Coach of the Year. One, in close games, in one-score games, 4-0, right? They won games that arguably they shouldn't have won. And I was impressed with that. They turned Faurot Field into a great home field advantage. But maybe the most important part of it was his decision to give up play calling duties. Like, that's how Drink became a head coach, is because of how good of a play caller he was. And he says, no, I'm done with this. I'm going to, pass these responsibilities off, so that way I can be a better on-field coach. And I think that made all the difference in the world. I think that's why they were 4-0 in those one-score games. And I think that's the reason why they're on the cusp of 11-win season. He'd be my SEC coach of the year.
Yeah, I think one reason I asked you that, I was pretty sure you were going to go Drinkwitz. I wondered where Lane Kiffin might factor in. This is 2 out of 3 years now that he's brought a 10-2 record to Oxford, Mississippi. Has not been done before.
He's fourth. I mean,
okay.
A great job by Lane. I mean, you think about, where that program was at, and I always feel like they're going to be the perfect team for a 12-team playoff, where I don't know if they'll always be at one of those top 4 seeds. But damn, if you get them in at home, or you got to face a Lane Kiffin offense in one of those big games late in December, buddy, good luck to you, because that is a wild card that could upset some apple carts for sure.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And I was curious what you would do with Saban and Kirby Smart. I could certainly make the argument this is Saban's best coaching job at Alabama. I mean, to your point, it was not an obviously championship level team. There are a lot of, not just at quarterback, Jalen Milroe has come miles and is playing near elite level quarterback now, but he had to do that at several position groups. Several position groups had to come a long way for him.
Yeah, but again, what was our expectation of Alabama?
Always to win a championship.
To win a championship. And so, again, I always joke around that it should be called the Nick Saban Coach of the Year award, and it goes to either Saban or somebody else that year. I would be kind of curious to see who the other coaches would vote for.
Yeah, because Kirby, too, I can make that argument. He's been without Brock Bowers, maybe the best player in America. Ladd McConkey has been out a lot. He's taken a quarterback that had not been a starter, and he's replaced maybe the best starting quarterback at school history, and you haven't really missed a beat at quarterback. I think Kirby he's done maybe his best job of coaching at Georgia, too.
Yeah, again, in
championships.
It's championships.
That's what you expect. Yeah,
what you have and what you expect out of those guys. So, again, I think there were some great jobs on the flip side of it. I think there were some jobs that weren't very good. You could talk about, the job that Sam Pittman did in Fayetteville. And as important was it for Drink to win every single one of those games in Columbia, it was the opposite in Arkansas. Every time that they had a home game, Arkansas looked absolutely atrocious. And, I thought maybe that might be one of the coaching changes that was going to be made in the offseason. I'm glad that Sam Pittman's going to be back one more year, gives Hunter Yurachek an opportunity, say, hey, let's go try to figure it out one more time. But, man, to give that vote of confidence, to have one more game to see if it rallied the troops, and to get blown out by Missouri at home, man, that's, but then again, think about it. They wanted to run Mike Norvell out of FSU, and that worked. Jim Harbaugh, different level, but remember, he could never beat Ohio State, and he legitimately went back to the administration and said, pay me less. Don't fire me. I'll take a pay cut, and let's figure this thing out. Now, of course, that coincides with them starting to steal signs and that investigation. That's a whole different podcast. But that worked, and I hope it works for Pittman, because I think he's great for the league, great guy. But, man, it ain't going to get easier with Oklahoma and Texas coming in, especially the way they're coming in right now, Brian.
Let's finish up with Peter Burns on these new hires. Mike Elko coming to Texas A&M. Jeff Lebby coming to Mississippi State. The show presented by MyBookie.ag. Code next round. MyBookie.ag. Code next round. That gets you that 50% sign-up bonus up to $1,000. They'll match your sign-up at 50% up to $1,000 when you use code next round at MyBookie.ag. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie.ag. You can get plays for MyBookie.ag there at Lance'sLock.com. Daily packages available, weekly, monthly, full season. He's got a ton of college basketball and NBA up. And the bowl package coming soon, college football bowl package coming soon at Lance'sLock.com. And, of course, NFL games, all that at Lance'sLock.com. All right, 2 new hires so far in the Southeastern Conference. Mike Elko to Texas A&M, Jeff Lebby to Mississippi State. Let's start with Elko to A&M, a comfortable hire. He has coached there before. He's done a nice job at Duke. Depending on what you think about what happened with Mark Stoops or any other candidate, there are some that are going to view him as not the first choice. But but this Elko hire is an interesting one.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily know if that wasn't the case. I think for some people at A&M, he was going to be their first choice. So this is not like, hey man, this is Tennessee back in the day trying to hire Mike Leach, you know, and on a conference call basically. This is Elko made sense. I think it was always kind of a thing in their back pocket. They wanted to shoot their shot with some other people. And ultimately, I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, you think about the two coaches we just talked about for Coach of the Year that I don't think would win it, Kirby and Nick Saban. Well, guess what? They're championship caliber coaches. They've won a title, and they're defensive-minded coaches. So as much as we get enthralled with the Lane Kiffins of the world and even the Drinks and the offensive-minded guys, it's defensive gurus that win championships. And that's what they've kind of prided themselves on for A&M. Mostly because the offense has been, you know, really bad. So Elko's been there. I think you have to understand College Station and understand A&M football to properly harness the power. I don't think Jimbo ever did that. It would always seem like an awkward fit. So yeah. And Elko, I mean, think about this. Had there not been an extension, they might have made this deal 2 years ago to where Elko would have just been the defensive coach, and then he ends up taking over for Jimbo. Would have made kind of sense. But now he got a chance to go to Duke, understand what it's like for time management to be a head coach for 2 years, and it was a perfect training ground. So I know Aggie fans don't like the timing of it or the buyout, but it's not like they're paying for it. Boosters will. And ultimately, I think they got a pretty good coach. I don't feel like it's a home run hire, but when you say it checks a bunch of boxes, like, yeah. And you keep Elijah Robinson as well, too. His former defensive line coach that the players loved, kind of like how Hugh Freeze kept Caddy, you know, to make sure that the player's guy is on that team.
All right. So what I'm about to say is going to sound like an insult, and I do not mean it as one. If anything, I mean it as a compliment. When you hire Jeff Levy, are you hiring Lane Kiffin with less Twitter game?
Yeah, and look at what it's done for.
I know that's a compliment. That is not an insult. It kind of sounds like one, but it is not at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think this was a situation where it made a whole lot of sense. And that's why one of those names, you know, Levy was always going to be a name that's looked at because of the relationship that Zach Selman saw when he was over at Oklahoma. And he, I'm sure, talked to people and go, hey, you know, what about this guy? And he knew him. And so sure enough, it made sense. And you need to have something unique in you in Starkville. Leach had it, of course, with his offense. Mullen had it with his offense. You know, Joe Moorhead never really did it. Zach Arnett really didn't have it necessarily of, you know, what's your thing, okay? And the thing for Levy is that he's a fantastic play caller. And the fact that him and Lane are boys and they're already giving each other hell, the fact that he comes from the Art Briles kind of tree of coaching and offensive stuff, like, man, I mean, the Egg Bowl is going to be as to me, it's always one of the top rivalries that are out there. And now it's going to feel like Arena Football League because you're going to see a bunch of points being scored between those two. They're probably going to give each other a bunch of hell. Lane's already been doing it on Twitter, and I'm all here for it. I actually like both of the hires here in this conference.
All right, he is the SEC Network and ESPN's Peter Burns. The show presented by MyBookie.ag. Code next round to get that 50% sign-on match up to $1,000. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere. MyBookie.ag. Code next round. Enjoy championship week, Burnsy. We'll see you next week.
We will see. You'll be in Atlanta? Yes, no, maybe.
I'm going to be there, my friend. Let's relive the selfie on the sideline.
First 10 drinks are on you. Looking forward to it.
You got it. I'll see you then.
See you, bud.